All right, Auburn hires Hugh Freeze to be the next head football coach. Let's talk about it.
Put me in the parking lot, with bears, and I'll go out there and play. It don't matter.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Today's show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. It's a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing that you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. The man who knows more about delicious meat than anyone is Auburn message board legend Charlie 5. Auburn hires Hugh Freeze.
Yes.
The rumors are all true. Everything has come to fruition. That's done. That really long process that probably felt a lot longer than actually was is done. And I guess the big question that you have whenever you hire a new head coach, right, is can they help you win a championship?
Yes.
And you think Hugh Freeze gets Auburn closer to a championship?
Absolutely. 100%. And the reason that I think that is because he's taken every single program he's been at, screw the overall records at the program. I mean, that's no context. That's lazy. Just it's like box score guy. Okay, tell the whole story.
Got it.
Every program he's been a part of was terrible, and he elevated it to the highest point that program had ever been. Okay, so if and he's done it 3 times. Okay, it's not like it was one time as a fluke. Okay, he took Arkansas State to the highest it's ever been. He took Ole Miss. They've won 10 games 3 times in 22 years. Okay, he's got one of them. So that's pretty solid right there. Okay, then
right.
You go to Liberty. Liberty's on its second year of football in D1 ever, and he takes them to 10 wins. I mean, I don't really know how much more proven you can be, how much more of a proven product that Auburn's ever hired. I don't know that Auburn's ever hired more of a proven product of building a program builder that can take programs to the highest points of their success than Hugh Freeze, than any of the candidates.
You said this on our live show that was on Monday, and that's on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, it's early in the podcast feed. If you're listening on audio, if you want to hear that, it's like over an hour long. But if you want all that stuff, there you go. But you said this, and it was a great way to say it. You said 8 wins at Ole Miss is different than 8 wins at Auburn.
Of course.
I want to remind folks, because most folks seem to be pro Kiffin. Not everyone, but most Auburn fans seem to be pro Kiffin. And the argument was, if you can win 10 games at Ole Miss, oh my goodness, what can you do at Auburn? Right? That was the big picture argument for Lane Kiffin.
Then you have sports writers. You have sports writers that are unemployed sports writers that put out tweets that are like, "Oh, his win percentage is 60% and Gus's was 66. Why? Blah blah blah. Why are we excited over this?" It's because it's 2 different schools. You're not comparing apples to oranges. And any sports writer,
you are comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're comparing apples to oranges. And any sports writer worth their salt that's not trying to push a narrative would be able to break that down, just like anybody else. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible argument. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Sure. Okay. So that's a big part of this, and the other part of this is the recruiting aspect of it, and it kind of got proven a little bit. Obviously, it's such a small sample size, but you love the attitude and the mindset of it. Is as soon as he was hired, you got national sports writers saying, all right, I'm told he's already focusing on recruiting. And it's like, thank goodness, man. Gosh, we needed something like that. After the last 2 years, somebody that's coming in and literally, Charlie 5, literally the first thing he thinks about is like, all right, we need to recruit the big muscular children to come play for us.
Hulking super teens.
And I'm sure he was calling the committed players. Like, if that's my guess of what he did that qualified as recruiting, I bet he was calling to make sure everybody was still committed. That is my guess. I don't know that, but that's my guess.
I bet he made a couple of calls to a 334 area code over there in about 55 miles down the road. I bet you he made 2 phone calls there as well. And
Understood.
if you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, just effort. That's just what I want to see. I want to see effort. I want to see someone that cares, someone that understands it. And that's what he lives, eats, breathes is recruiting. That's what he's known for. And that's what I've always dreamed of as a coach ever since. It was fun a little while for the Chizik era because they seemed to they had no idea what they were doing assembling a roster. They were just going out and getting 5 stars.
Right.
But that's what this guy does. He wants to put together a roster. He wants to recruit at a high level and recruit fervent all the time. And I love it.
Yeah. So it's been reported at this point that they plan on keeping Caddy on staff, which
big.
Is nice. We all assumed it. It's nice to get that information.
Would not have had that with Kiffin. You more than likely would not have had Caddy with Kiffin.
That's probably true.
Because Kit Lane's not going to let anyone upstage him, and there's a lot of people that thought Caddy probably should have been the head coach, even though he didn't really. I don't think Caddy really wanted to be the head coach, and if that was in Lane Kiffin's mind, he couldn't deal with it. So that would not have happened.
Yeah, I talked to somebody Monday night that told me, very close to Caddy, that told me that they didn't think you wanted it either. So we'll see. But yeah, so that's nice. There was a player.
I'm sorry. Zach looks like he's being retained. So
yeah, that'll be good.
That's big as well.
Yeah, and so we'll see what else happens over the next few days. But then there's there was a players meeting last night.
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze was not there, but it was Cohen talking to the players just about different things. I think it was just kind of laying out what the next few days are going to look like. And then Tuesday morning, 7:00. This will already happen by the time most of you get this, but that will be when Freeze speaks to the players for the first time.
Unbelievable.
And then 10:00 is
press conference,
the introductory presser. There's something going on Monday night about how Auburn said there wasn't going to be a press conference because the PR of the hire was so bad. Just stop this, guys. If you don't support the hire, I get it, but don't make stuff up about it, right? Yeah. Let's focus on that. So that's what the next 12 hours looks like at the time of us recording this. So we'll see what happens with all of that. And then you got to think OC hires and DC hires will be coming next.
Yes. It's going to come fast. I am curious to see the bowl situation, and the reason is because I don't think I think it's sort of like you got to have a drop one, add one situation. I don't think you can have more than a certain amount of coaches, which I think is 10. And if you drop one, you can't add a new one without dropping an old one. So I don't know how that dynamic works.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So I don't really know how you do that when you kind of got to assemble your staff, at least the high points, and then start recruiting hardcore. So
this kind of goes back to what we were talking about a long time ago. Is it beneficial to have to deal with the bowl game stuff? I do think it's a net positive, but there are benefits in this situation where if you're not in a bowl game, you can kind of go ahead and get a jump on other things. So the coaching staff being one of them.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, he's not going to coach the bowl game, but just evaluation time. Evaluation time when you're this offseason is about rebuilding this roster, seeing who you got, what you need. I actually do think that's very, very important.
All right, we're seeing it everywhere. Is Hugh Freeze really Gus Malzahn 2.0? We address that next right here on Locked On Auburn. Charlie 5 Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Omaha Steaks. The holidays are here, and achieving gift-giving greatness when you give the perfectly aged, tender, delicious Omaha Steaks.
It's juicy.
Juicy. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks, they've put together a special curated gift package to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. And guess what you get when you do that?
A meat package.
Yes, $30 off your meat package.
Send me a meat package for Christmas.
What does this make you think of? when I say the world's best beef, naturally aged for the ultimate tenderness, juiciness, and flavor? What does that make you think of?
Omaha Steaks.
Omaha Steaks. That's it. So go ahead and check out omahasteaks.com. Use promo code Locked On for juicy meats.
Juicy meat.
Happy Charlie Tuesday to all who celebrate. We're seeing this everywhere, right? Charlie 5, we're seeing this with, all Hugh Freeze is Gus Malzahn 2.0. But that's not true because of why, Charlie 5.
All right, I'm going to give you a few reasons, okay? Number one, Gus Malzahn may be Hugh Freeze 2.0. Because Hugh Freeze is the one that started this as being a head coach. He was the one that became a head coach first. Gus rode his coattails, rode his program that he built at Arkansas State, and parlayed that into becoming an SEC head coach. That's number one. Gus became a head coach after Hugh Freeze. Okay. This is number two. Okay. This is a really big one. Gus could recruit fairly well. He could not develop talent on the offensive side of the ball. While Gus was here, he had roughly 4 or 5 first-round picks. Only one of them was on offense, and that was Greg Robinson in 2013, which was not someone he brought in, not someone he developed. It was a one season. He played out of his mind. He was a first-round pick. I'll give Gus some credit for that just because of the success that offense had. It was really good. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Hugh Freeze, on the other hand, has had 3 first-round offensive picks that he brought in and he developed and he turned in to first-round picks. You have Evan Ingram, who was a tight end hybrid. Landon King is salivating right now.
Sure.
You have Laquan Treadwell, unbelievable wide receiver while he was at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. And
then you had newsflash, he can develop offensive linemen. Laramie Tunsil, or whatever his name is. I don't know how to spell. You can actually, in Hugh Freeze's offense, you can actually recruit 5-star high school offensive linemen, and then you can develop them, and then NFL coaches will not laugh at you when you try to put them into the NFL draft. Uh-huh. They'll say that guy, that offense right there translates to the NFL. This kid's good. I'll draft him in the first round. There is no comparison. That is no comparison from talent acquisition and development. There's 2 key pieces to that, and execution of your offensive system. So that's that. And then you have what I consider. I'm trying to figure out how to word this correctly, but there's one thing to recruit, and then there's one thing to not do everything you can to not lose a guy. You're going to go to the edges of the earth. Okay. And right now it is the wild, wild west. Right now, everything that he got in trouble for cheating, which all he was trying to do is have the playing field level between all the big boys. And he would go beat their ass, excuse my language, for 5-star guys. Now he doesn't need the network to hide it. He doesn't need the Red Elephant Club from Alabama. He doesn't need all these things behind the curtains that the big boys have that we've never been able to, replicate. He's got NIL. He's got a passionate NIL, passionate for him specifically. And I'm just telling you, you cut this guy loose, and he's got the ability to not only sell himself, but be able to sell NIL as well. Oh boy. I mean,
and that plays into the whole thing that people are saying where it's like, well, the only reason he recruited well at Ole Miss was because he cheated, right? And it's like, well, you could do that now, but you don't have the competitive advantage that he did at Ole Miss because it was cheating, right? But the only way the effort and relationships are going to be there because that's what he's done everywhere that he's been.
The only way it was a competitive advantage at Ole Miss is if you operate under the assumption that nobody else was paying players. And if that's what you believe, I got, oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you, or whatever that song is, because there's no recruiting machine ever that has ever been able to go head to head and beat Alabama on a consistent basis. They're that. I've always been envious of how well and organized they do their recruiting behind the scenes. And he went into, I talked about this on the live show, but I want you to understand this. He went into a high school in Atlanta, Georgia, somewhere in Georgia, I believe it was right around Atlanta, and beat Nick Saban head-to-head for Robert and Kim Dichie, who became a first-round pick on defense. He develops them on both sides, okay? So that's what you're getting right now. You're getting a guy who is not scared of anyone on the trail. He is not intimidated by anyone. He will walk in right in front of, right behind. He is not worried about being stumped, being outshined in a living room. And
right.
That's what you're getting. That is not Gus Malzahn. That's not anything remotely comparable to Gus Malzahn. Offense, I've already talked about it. The passing game is vastly more explosive, vastly more dynamic. From the different route combinations to the play style, it's not a comparison. It's not a comparison at all.
All right, let's talk about some potential names for offensive and defensive coordinators that would be exciting in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Be sure to check out my written work at auburndaily.com. Also, be sure to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free, like 1,500 Auburn fans in there chatting it up. Yesterday was wild, but be sure to join that in the episode description down below.
Understatement.
Yeah. Is there a coordinator? I think the defensive coordinator is more interesting in all this because the offense is going to be it's going to be Hugh Freeze's offense, right? I don't think that's a hot take. It's going to be similar to what we saw in the Gus Malzahn era. I do think you'll agree that part is similar, right? Like whoever's the coordinator, you're going to run the offense of the head coach. So
they said some things where, like, I saw some tweets or some stuff where they said he used to call the plays on first and second down, and then his guy at Liberty would call the plays on. That's kind of weird, but I think for the most part, you're right. It's going to be Hugh Freeze's offense.
Yeah, which it needs to be, right? I mean, I think Auburn fans have gone a decade, with the exception of like 3 years in the last decade, like with no offense or with an inept offense. So with the exception of 13, 14, and 17, it's been like, come on. So let it be Hugh Freeze's offense. I think that's going to be awesome. So Charles Kelly just keeps popping up to me as the name for the defensive coordinator. He's an assistant in Alabama, DB's coach at Bama, right?
Associate DC and DB's coach. Yeah.
So, an incredible. We talked about Hugh Freeze being a good recruiter. You talk about a great recruiter. Charles Kelly, and the list of players that he's brought in is second to very few people.
Yeah, if you just go into Google and search Charles Kelly 247, and it'll pull up his coaching profile, and you can look at his all-time commits. I mean, like one that you're gonna know is Will Anderson. I mean, Will Anderson, he's pretty good. It's like a who's who. It's like a who's who of, we had an offensive tackle that we wanted named Elijah Pritchett out of Carver in Columbus, Georgia. 4-star offensive tackle. Guess who got him? Freaking Charles Kelly. Like, he recruits everybody. It doesn't matter. It's not just defense. He has an area, and he recruits that area extremely, extremely well. So that name's always going to be around. There's a lot of other exciting names. I personally would love to see. I think I talked about this on the live stream, but there's a good chance Mike Leach is going to retire, and Zach Arnett could be available, and he has the most look of a defensive coordinator that I've ever seen in my life. He looks like a defensive coordinator. He's paid pretty well. I think he's paid like $1.2 million, but with Hugh Freeze's salary being so low, that's a guy you could give $1.5, $1.7 million and not even be able to blink twice about it. A young, up and coming, very sharp defensive coordinator. That's a name I would love to see get in the mix.
I love that we're talking about his salary being so low, and it's still like over $1 million more than what Harsin made every year.
Yeah. The reason it excites me is because, Lane Kiffin was going to take $10 to $11 million. But the salary pool for the assistants was rumored to be, said, hey, we'll give you up to $7 million to hire assistant coaches, which is insane for Auburn. And that puts your total salary pool at $17 or $18 million. Hugh Freeze is only 6.5. I mean, that would give you $11-ish million to work with. You know what Alabama's salary pool is? $7.8 million. I mean, in other words, it affords you the opportunity to go hire the best staff that money can buy. I mean, that, as cliche as that sounds, that is exactly the position that it puts us in.
Yeah, and you talk about like winning recruiting battles. That's the difference, right? Like that's 100%. The difference in all of it. And so, keep Zac, keep Caddy. I hope you keep Ike. It sounds like Christian Robinson. There's a mutual, like they've already got a relationship
somehow. And I looked after the live show. I tried to find it. I've heard it said that there's a mutual.
They may just know each other.
Like, there's conventions and coaches conventions. He's been around for a while, Georgia, Florida, stuff like that. So sure, maybe they met at some SEC meetings or something like that. Who knows? But there is a connection there. So C-Rob, I think, has been hamstrung a little bit since he's been here. He kind of came on right after, or right before a lot of the stuff went south, and has been sort of handcuffed and. Reinvigorated, or like a new, starting over and being able to just have the reins taken away and go, may be beneficial to keep a guy like that around.
Charlie 5, thank you so much for your time as always. If you want to hear more of our conversation from yesterday, like I said earlier in the show,
1 hour.
It's on YouTube. It's like an hour and 15 minutes. It's also on your favorite podcast app as well. So Charlie 5, how can people find you, hear you, love you, all that stuff?
Absolutely. Find me on Twitter at @the_Charlie_5 in the Locked On Auburn Discord every single day. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Dad Bod Golf Pod.
Read all my written work at auburndaily.com. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.